So we're at the final panel of the day. What we're going to be talking about is the intersection of emerging technologies, as well as the innovation ecosystem. We want to make it generative and interactive. So we're going to leave some Q&A at the end and really get a sense from the audience on how you think we can build up this startup ecosystem. But to kick it off, well, I'll let them all introduce themselves, but we all kind of have different lanes, and I invited Diana to the panel. We go back a ways to San Francisco. She's got the VC and the investor view on this panel. Like looking at this, I thought, okay, startups are going to hear from that perspective. So can you introduce what you're up to right now?
Sure. Nice to see everyone here today. I'm Diana Sankovic. I'm Director of Investments at Arizona Venture Development Corporation. We go by ABC for short. And we are one of the newest institutional VC funds on the scene in Arizona. And we launched in July. I came on board in August. We are both a fund of funds, whereby we anchor new funds that focus on investing in Arizona. And we also make direct investments in early stage tech startups across all sectors, and I'll talk more about that when we talk about economic development later in the panel. We've so far made 3 direct investments in the past 9 months and 4 fund investments. We're actively catalyzing new private investment in the state.
Can you talk a little bit about here we go.
Hello. Can you talk a little bit about the venture community here? I know that, you said you're relatively new. During the Phoenix Open, there was a gathering of the investment community. I'm imagining that it's a smaller circle than the Bay Area. But can you give us some sense of what the venture investment community looks like here?
Sure. So 3 years ago, even, the Arizona venture community, you could maybe speak about it in 30 seconds, and that's because there were only a few small funds to speak of. That has actually changed quite quickly, and at the time of the Phoenix Open, when we had the Tech Summit that is sponsored by AZVC, formerly the Envision Fund, there are already a lot of excitement about the growth of the VC community as it exists today and as it's evolving very quickly. And we ourselves have already anchored 3 new funds. So one of our missions is to catalyze more private investment in the state. And in our pipeline, looking forward, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that will be focused on the state in the next few years. And already we've catalyzed $250 million plus in the investments that we already made. But yes, the VC community and the ecosystem is still small in Arizona, but I think that also makes it very special. And another thing that's happening is that startups are moving here. It's happening quickly. And while I see a lot of deal flow simply because I'm well connected in the ecosystem, I'm starting to see deal flow simply because of migration happening to Phoenix and other places in Arizona, and that's happening naturally. Another thing I wanted to say about our fund is that we also have a mission to focus on underserved founders. And by underserved, I mean not only minorities and women, but also startups from people living in rural areas. And that's part of the mission of the source of our funds.
Awesome. Like the underserved community component to that. Pretty rare. Okay, Jay. We had Jay on the panel at Venture Cafe a couple weeks ago. It's where we met. You're holding down the gaming side from GCU. I loved your journey So if you can introduce yourself, I like the way you talked about that.
Sure.
And the role of education in the ecosystem.
Definitely, yeah. So, hey y'all, I'm Jay. I'm the current director of esports operation over at Grand Canyon University. We compete with ASU right now, so they don't know I'm here. GCU, that is. But I started the program before I came to GCU, where I've been for about 2 years now. I started the program actually at Mississippi State as a student. 18 years old, jumped in, grew from what a lot of gaming clubs were and still are today, which was just a 30-person League of Legends club, into an 800-person gaming program at Mississippi State, which was eventually their biggest club and program on campus. After about a year and a half running that program, you can imagine I got a lot of opportunity in the world of sports and gaming. So I kind of decided school wasn't really for me after a year and a half. Started working with Coca-Cola as a subject matter expert and gaming ambassador. I also started working with Team Envy and the Dallas Fuel and kind of the Overwatch League and starting that on the production side. Then I have a myriad of experience with tournament operations and sponsorship activation. So I've kind of been around it in my short time in gaming and esports, but eventually found my way at GCU, where I found that I think the biggest thing we're missing in gaming, tech, and especially esports is education, right? A lot of what I focus on and we focus on is not only educating, obviously, parents and administrators, but also students as to what not only gaming and esports is, but what it can be, right? So where a lot of probably you in the room and even a lot of our students see gaming and esports as something that, maybe they can make $3 million, right? Be in Booga, winning a Fortnite tournament, or maybe they can be Ninja and make millions of dollars a year by streaming, from their bedroom, right? We're trying to educate students, parents, and administrators alike that it doesn't have to be that way. And in fact, that's probably not the best bet for our, maybe our ecosystem, maybe our industry, and showing our students, again, parents and administrators, that operations may also be a way to work behind and underneath esports. So we focus a lot on educating parents, students, and administrators on the opportunities that exist in the world of operations in esports, because that operations world in esports is also kind of applicable to all the other entertainment worlds that we're used to seeing. So football, baseball, basketball, used to seeing those social media teams, those digital content teams, those marketing teams, the statistic teams for the players, all the different operational things that you're used to seeing in traditional sports. We also have in esports. You just don't hear about them because it's not as exciting as somebody winning $3 million playing Fortnite, right? So helping students, parents, and administrators understand that there is an other side to esports that doesn't end in having to be a streamer or a Fortnite player / winner. So at GCU, we focus a lot on that. We create opportunity for over 70 students a year to gain experience, real-world experience in social media, graphic design, photo, video, production. We stream more than athletics right now 4 times a week. So we do a lot over at GCU, and it's really to provide our students with opportunity to move on right at the end of the school year. A lot of you probably know, students or not, it's really cool when you're a social media student, graduated, 4-year degree, and you love your local team just like everybody else. It's really cool. For the example we use for that is our student, Mitch. He's from Seattle. He wants to go to the Seattle Mariners after 4 years, just like everybody else saying, hey, I love you guys. Hey, I went to school. I'm educated, and I want to work for you. And they're going to tell him the same thing that they tell every excited college student who is that way. And so that's great. What's your experience? And eventually they'll find he has none, and he'll probably be quickly shoved out the door, just like a lot of other college students who lack experience once they've gotten that piece of paper. But our students will be able to walk out of that door with their piece of paper in hand, and our student like Mitch will also be able to walk out of that door and say, hey, not only do I have the education on what I want to do, but I also have experience doing exactly what I want to come do for you. I have experience running a brand account. I have experience being a brand voice. I have experience owning the passwords, because sometimes that's a thing that's important to a company. I have experience running sponsorship activations, all the different things that a Seattle Mariners would want to see, or in all the different operational camps that I mentioned, we're trying to provide to our students. So again, that at the end of 4 years, they're able to go off and say, hey, not only am I educated, but I'm also experienced because of our esports program. And again, even if it's not like with Mitch, it doesn't have to be esports. He's doing social media with us to learn all these different things through esports. He's going to move on into sports. That's what he's really interested in. So for us, again, it's about educating and providing opportunities for our students so that they can move on as quickly as possible and maybe not have to sleep on as many couches as I did after dropping out. So that's me.
Can you talk a little bit about the opportunities for entrepreneurs in the gaming industry? I was, surprised to know that it's a $200 billion industry, gaming overall. Film being 40 billion, music about 20 billion. So a $200 billion industry, right? What opportunities do you see for an entrepreneur?
I think esports is still the Wild West. Gaming and esports is still kind of the Wild West. That's actually how I eventually found my way at GCU from Mississippi State. I started my own tournament operations company because of my connections at Mississippi State. The success we had, partnered by Power and ran a Valorant tournament that ended up being noticed and picked up at GCU, and I eventually found my way over there. So I think all kinds of opportunity exists, whether it be tournament operations, whether it be the exciting things that you guys are here about, whether it's streams or professional teams, right? I think there's a slew of opportunity out there, but I think for entrepreneurs, it's finding your niche within gaming and esports and diving in deep into that, again, whether it's production or tournament operations or professional teams and past that content creation stream.
Jake, you're up. Do your thing. I know Workforce is going to come in there. Some of the organizations that we've worked with so far. You're just back from Estonia. Please share.
There's so much guidance on that. That's fantastic direction. I'll do my best here. Yeah, Estonia was great. I'm going to actually riff off of Jay here to start, though, because he just asked him about the gaming ecosystem. I'm the game development guy, right? He plays the games. I make them. So you brag all you want about League of Legends. All I do is nerf your guy a little bit, and I still hold the cards. All right, so it all comes back here. But yeah, a little bit about me just feeding into that, too. So Jake Taylor, Mesa native, born and raised here in Arizona. I got into the game development scene in 2012. I was over at GDC, Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. I'd originally approached them to talk about intellectual property rights. So speaking of our Lexigor quiz earlier too with IP. That was right when the Wii U was coming out, and they said, do you want to make games instead? Anyway, long story short, I got into game development and published a few titles. But where I've been lately and what led to my title here, we sat in order, just so there's no confusion. I know Diane and I look a lot alike, so we wanted to really differentiate between that. But I started to shift. 2 years ago, I found myself in the smart city space, specifically around GameStill. And what really got me excited about this conversation specifically is this idea of converging technology. You talk about smart cities, well, what does that have to do with games? And I think Jay said something earlier, too, that's really important here is what we're missing is education. Now, where he said for students, I'm going to counter and go to policymakers and administrators and the parents that think that video games is just about entertainment, just about playing, just about having fun. Because what I really started to discover is if you make a game, what have you learned? Let's make this interactive. Anyone? If you make a game, what have you done? I can't actually hear, so what was that?
I heard storytelling.
Storytelling? Great. I don't usually get that one until later. That's fantastic. Anyone else? Okay, yes. What do we got?
Social engineering outcome.
There you go. Ooh, I like that. We're going to talk about design a lot, too.
Got coding over here, too.
Okay, coding, good. That's the one we normally start with, right? Coding, art, but storytelling, production. What do we got?
Psychology, understanding every single way a user can approach it.
And that is going to be the segue to smart cities and civics with gamification. Fantastic. There's a lot. If you go through and you learn how to make a game, you have just learned everything that you just talked about in really a robust way, and you come out with a portfolio that is immediately transferable. What was really interesting in my experience about 5 years ago, we started with all of our game design programmers. Where were they going? Banking.
California.
Well, specifically city-wise, yeah, that New York. But banking, Bank of America, Chase, they were gobbling up all of our programmers because this skill set began to really bleed into so many other aspects of our lives. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But what we've really done here at the VRARA, and that's kind of the official hat that I'm wearing here, VR, Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality Association, is bringing together all of these pieces and driving a workforce and a tool set that we think is going to be likely, well, it's the most robust. You learn to use this, you can work anywhere. Or, more applicably, you can start up anything. Let's see, anything specific? We've done a lot here.
I'd like you to go a little deeper into the workforce. You might touch on the Luke engagement and the city of Glendale.
That's a great one. To continue ripping off Jay, you're going to see a lot of parallels here. I think most of it's really me just trying to upstage him, which is really hard, but no.
And you're trying to compete.
So Luke Air Force Base was one of the first people we talked about, and when they came, they told us that when people are coming into the service, I mean, you think of leadership skills, you think of other things that they might be lacking, technical acquisition, but what they said was just basic communication. How to just interact with others, how to play nice. And the first conversation we had was around esports specifically. We have a fascinating individual named Allison, who's I think the third best Halo player on the planet, and that's how she learned to work as a team. That's how she became a squad leader, how she learned to work with her cohorts, her fellow soldiers in very high-risk situations. Well, we took that a step forward. One of the issues they had was transferring out of the military. I don't want to go too much kind of into their process, but specifically, when you take on a role, that's what you do. If you're a bomb engineer, that's what you do. You can be the best Python developer in the world, but that's not what you were hired to do. So when you get out of the Army, they give you a little portfolio that says, great, you can be a security guard, and that is your transition. What we started looking at with Air Force Gaming specifically was if while you're there, the same thing I said earlier, you build a game, you have learned how to code, you have learned how to interact with others, you have learned how to go through strategy. David Benson's another party we're working on with that one. Strategic operations, wargaming. Moral of the story is, could we create a platform by which all these active servicemen learn a talent that can be transferable outside, that allows them to build something for the force while they're currently, and then leave with a portfolio that helps them get in the door, all through games.
Yes, so I'll just transition a little bit on that. They were referring to it as gaming as training. I think they had 14 F-16s crash, and they recognized that 2 of those were based on human error communication. The 12 being mechanical failure. But that's a fairly high ratio, and they're looking at who's going into the service, the Gen XYZs, right? That have grown up and expect that type of interface and that type of way of working and those communication channels. So they're finding it as a training technology now, trying to lean into that from the military. You want to talk about Glendale a little bit as well, Jake? They really seem to be leading this as an economic development group.
Yeah, we might kind of go back and forth on this one too, Jake, because I know you're working really closely with them. But that's something that Daniel, a colleague of ours over at the city of Glendale, realized. Something Jay mentioned again is we really like to focus on the glitz and glam. Your PewDiePies, your Mr. Beast, these people that are bringing in huge amounts of money, and they're the ones that have the spotlight. But what Daniel really recognizes that we teamed up on really quickly is that those don't grow out of an ecosystem where there isn't something to foster it. If you have a petri dish of insert anything here, you're not going to get anything out of that wasn't part of that system. In order to reach that threshold, you have to have everything. You can't just have the number 3 Halo player. You have to have the high schools that are doing this. You have to have the middle schools. You have to have the libraries that are teaching this. So whatever it is that you want to foster, it has to start very early on, and it has to be ubiquitous. So if you want an entrepreneurship environment, but you're waiting until people go through grad school to get it, I don't know that you're going to have that much success. But if you are in an ecosystem, like another shout out to Venture Cafe, where we were, every single Thursday, you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people, something's going to be born out of that.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a quick introduction of myself. So I'm president of Virtual Reality Augmented Reality Association. There are 70 chapters around the world. There's many in North America, and there are country chapters as well for Estonia, Finland, I believe. Part of what we're doing is reaching out and trying to grow the ecosystem. Both Jake and I went to the Thunderbird School of Global Management, so we are using some of those channels to help grow the technology ecosystem. Here we're also working with economic development at the state, region, and city level. So we've found Glendale is really pushing this leadership in esports and trying to attract companies and build the ecosystem there. They are also focused on mega events and entertainment. So you'll see coming out that Vi Resort is a $1 billion resort that's being built up in Glendale. It looks like Vegas South. It's got a 6-acre pool. And a team of us are going up to Vegas basically for the weekend to explore some of the immersive content that is happening there. Area 15 is like the most visited place in Vegas. And it's got a lot of competition, obviously, from the resorts, but Vegas is recognizing that youth is moving on from gaming and looking for these more immersive experiences. What else do I want to touch on? So our path, we just started in February, this chapter, so we're relatively new, and I would say we're almost operating as a startup and looking to grow the ecosystem for the technologies. We don't consider it just VR and AR. We also look at the convergence, so that includes artificial intelligence, blockchain, everything that's gone through a recent hype cycle, I guess you could say, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But our path has been that we kicked off during Super Bowl week. We did a 3.5-day session with the community design process to prototype a regional metaverse that was in the form of a spaceport resort, kind of leaning into some of the industries that are strong here in the Valley. We had Space Force and Air Force Gaming come and did a little road trip with them that took us both to Luke Air Force Base as well as Arizona Homeland Security cyber team. So we're looking at some of these areas, including cyber, where our workforce of the future is going to be strong. Obviously, that's within the tech realm. We spoke at Venture Cafe, so Mark saw us speak there, and that was excellent. We did have representation from the city of Glendale and the city of Mesa. I will talk to Mesa for a quick period here. Mesa is really trying to grow its ecosystem as well for entrepreneurs. They invested $75 million, ASU about $5 million in a new campus there called the Media Immersive Experience Center in downtown Mesa. That is focused on film and XR and gaming. So it's also got some intersection with the Fulton School of Engineering and the Sidney Poitier New American Film. So they're really seeing the convergence of these technologies. And I think one thing that will lead us forward is that game engines are what is leading the ability to create both film, XR experiences, and gaming and those digital assets. So we'll get into that in a minute. Jay, do you want to say anything to gaming engine? No. Okay. As we get in, so this next part is going to be about the convergence of technology. So I spoke a little bit about the hype cycles. In San Francisco, 2015, I saw kind of the rise and fall of blockchain and crypto in the 2015s and 2018. We saw Metaverse recently get a bunch of hype, right? You couldn't go on LinkedIn without seeing an article. In the corporate realm, you'll see a lot of digital twins and Internet of Things. Jake can probably speak to those two. And we're seeing game engines, as I just mentioned, that are dominating. So it's moving faster and faster, and we're seeing this conversion of these technologies. And as I mentioned, game engines are really becoming the foundation for that. And we believe, or have believed, that the next technology stack, especially as the gentleman Igor mentioned, Apple coming out with their augmented reality glasses, we've already got the augmented reality through our phone, that the next computing stack will be a reality technology for the user interface, AI replacing the operating system level, and in cases where it's appropriate, blockchain being the database level. How soon that will all come together, we'll see. It'll probably have specific applications for specific industries. Jake, I wanted you to touch on the digital twin side and what was recently done with Connected, and if you can explain the Connected to the crowd.
Sure. This is going to be convoluted, but bear with me while I go through this. So the other hat I wear is the Connected. It's the Greater Phoenix Region Smart City Consortium. So what we do is we convene the 22 municipalities and towns and talk about the implementation of advanced technology. So one of those that we were looking at is digital twins. Now really quickly, kind of as a backdrop for that, Phoenix is really unique, and we're going to talk about that as an ecosystem a little bit differently. But in juxtaposition, you mentioned I just got here at midnight from Tallinn, Estonia. When I'm there, I was talking with some of the people, and they were so excited about what they're doing, and I said, this really is fascinating actually too. But scope and scale came up, and the entire country of Finland fits inside of the city of Phoenix. Not Arizona, not the municipality, the city of Phoenix. So when we look at these big issues, we're up to, what is it, about 7.5 million people total in the greater metro area. Who here lives in Phoenix? The city of, not greater. Okay, of those that raise your hands, who works in the city? About half. Out of those, who does all of your shopping and entertainment and everything else? Okay, by now all hands should be gone, except for that dude. He really likes Phoenix. No, you're good. Because we were talking in the city of Scottsdale. If you live in South Scottsdale, where do you shop? Empty marketplace. Our lives aren't consolidated into one area. So what they were looking at is, how do we implement these things in a way that benefits not really from a citizen perspective, but a human perspective? Your life is a lot more than just the geography or the boundary that any of these labels or cities do. Now, specific to bring this back to the conversation, digital twin. For those of you, I guess I should do another show of hands. Anyone not familiar with the digital twin? Okay, a handful. A digital twin in its purest form is a replication of a real-life object with data feeding into it to reenact it. So, for example, if I created a 3D model in Autodesk or Maya or something like that of a building, that's not quite a twin yet. Yes, it's a 3D representation of it. But if I add in IoT, Internet of Things, air quality, heat island effect, transport, mobility, and I can see the systems of that building working in real time, I now have a digital twin. Now, what we were doing at the Connective last week was looking, if we created a twin of this entire region, what would you do? I mean, this is Sim City in real life. You want to address the unhoused question. Because right now our policies just kick them from one place to another. We could look at it more holistically. If you wanted to look at urban heat island effect, 2 years ago, most heat-related deaths in the city of Phoenix in all time. Massive issue. Could we look at the entire region and ascertain, what we need to know? And I'm guessing you're wanting me to kind of tie this all together as well, because what is that built in? What is this massive scale twin built in? It's Unity. It's the game developers that put this all together. Now, they're only a piece of it. They're a very small piece of it, because what's processing this gigatons of information, which is not a real word, I know that, I use it intentionally, is AI. You're bringing AI. And then once you have this 3D replication of an entire area, that now transfers you to the metaverse. You are now touring buildings and processes before you get there. I really wish I had seen my hotel before I got there in Helsinki. The door stopped just below my shoulder. It was terrible. But that's something that I could have seen if I was able to tour it beforehand with this actual replication. I could see what traffic was like before I got there. I could test all of this in real time. If I wanted to see what it would look like, I'm going to go a little dark here, for example, but one thing we look at is, what if the dams holding the water over on the East Valley break? What would that look like? We can simulate all of that. I mean, down to the nanobyte of what it would look like. We can simulate that. And this is the convergence of thousands of technologies that have come together. Now, I'll leave my next point kind of towards later, but again, kind of that convergence is what you really see in the sphere.
So Diana, since we talked about it earlier, we're going to go with that last hyped. I'm sure there's more coming, but Igor touched on this a bit. ChatGPT supposedly changed everything. what are you seeing? How does it affect your decisions on investment? How does it change the perspective on the kind of companies you look at? What's your impression?
Yeah, I have a number of two areas of commentary here. One is exactly what I've been seeing up until today on how our startups have been reacting to this. And the second is more of a general philosophical comment that expands upon what Igor said, but which is a bit contrary to what he said. So to start with the immediate landscape and what are the implications, I think the first reactions were completely knee-jerk. This is going to change everything. Many people are going to lose their jobs. I think we're starting to see that that's not how it's necessarily going to play out as we sort of see the fallout in the last month, or maybe it's been even less time since it came out. But even today, one of my startups in a board meeting is already working on how they're going to integrate ChatGPT as a technology, as a tool in their existing AI systems. I had one startup that most likely we're going to invest in that we've been watching for a while, where ChatGPT is, the initial reaction was that this would completely obliterate their business model. And then he came back and said, no, wait a second, that's not the case. We're actually working with ChatGPT 4 version and already integrating that into our systems. So startups are already using the technology as a tool, and it's not something that is going to all of a sudden wipe people and business models away. It's going to evolve to be a tool. Now, going back to AI in general, and the term that is now used as GAI, ChatGPT is a generative AI system. Recently, there are two different backlashes coming out against it. One is in terms of privacy, and the other is in terms of IP, and that's what Igor had mentioned earlier. This past week, Barry Diller, the chairman of IAC, which is a news media conglomerate, has led the charge on the part of news media organizations, the creators of content, saying, hang on a second, you're not going to just be able to use our content to train your model, to use it as a tool. You're going to need to license it from us. And our trade group is taking the position that if this doesn't happen, IP in general will suffer. And at the end of the day, new content will be created. The GAI system is training on something that needs to be regenerated, and it does, at the end of the day, come from human creativity. And so I think there is going to be a backlash, and there is discussion with Microsoft and Alphabet and other large players in AI to come to some sort of an agreement where they're not just going to be able to engage in extreme rent-seeking behavior and just be able to use all the data that's out there to create this tool that is suddenly going to take away jobs and people creativity. So I think that, watch that trend. I think that the industry is going to evolve, and I think that our society is going to have to protect IP in general for us to continue as a democracy, for us to continue in our humanity, frankly. And then there's the privacy angle. I think 15 years ago when I first started understanding the ad tech industry and how cookies are following you around on browsers, I said, you know what, when people actually find out about this, I don't think they're going to like it. But it took 15 years for legislatures and regulators to catch up, and consumer protection organizations. And so what's a big trend right now? The trend is for business models that protect opt-in of people in sharing their data. I don't think that anyone in this audience likes the idea that their personal data has been monetized and used by a lot of social media organizations for the past 10 years for free. Who owns your data? I'm sure you would like to own it. And so I think these trends are coming where there are going to be new companies that supplant these rent-seeking behaviors, where people are going to wake up and say, no, I want to opt in to share my data, and your business model has to take my privacy into account, and that creative content has to be licensed, not used freely by AI tools.
Awesome. The way that we were able to build a prototype with a single designer in basically 48 hours was using generative AI to do a lot of the visioning and hear from the audience we were working with in the community design process to basically reflect what they were sharing and the narrative that Jake talked about and the story that was being created for that. And Jake, I'd like to use that to build out VRA. I think that would be very smart to get our hands dirty with working on it. Do you guys see how that applies to the gaming ecosystem?
Yeah, I think for us, I'd like to echo the same point. Yeah, thanks. I'd like to echo the same point. Even for us at esports, GCU esports, we're using it as a tool. My students are using it as a tool, similar to how a lot of our students may be using it for a tool in their academic world, where we're not talking about that part. They're using it for their jobs as part of our operations. A lot of the students, again, right now are using it as a tool. None of our workers are using it as a one-to-one replacement for the work that they do, but it is helping cut down on a lot of that time that may have been spent otherwise. So we're using it as a tool. I'm using it personally as a tool. Everyone that I know in the space of esports and gaming is also using it as a tool, not really as an end-all or anything of that nature. So for us, we're also looking at it as a tool for gaming.
And I'm going to add to that too with a great question to bring this back around to what we're here doing today, startup realm. So I mean, it's absolutely true that a lot of these technologies close a lot of doors. But everyone that's in this room, I imagine, is here for a reason, and that's because you want to be a founder or are a founder, or you believe in basically being your own boss as an entrepreneur. Now again, yes, some doors closes, but the way we need to look at this is, and to use a metaphor, cloud computing isn't anything that wasn't possible before. We didn't have it because we didn't need it, and now you do. So again, using games as a bigger example, the graphics have kind of slowly advanced and come across, and as you require more, these technologies allow you to do that. Look at AI not as the doors that it closes, but as the way it blows away the boundaries that you used to have. Because in that space is infinitesimal region for innovation and startups. That's where you are going to find a new open door. A lot more a lot more open than we're closed. That's a promise. Now, specifically to what I'm doing, there's a fantastic article today. We just went through a lot of hype cycles. I'm glad you mentioned that, James. Whether it was metaverse, which is something I truly believe in still, or whether it was NFTs or otherwise. We're going to learn very quickly what AI is and what AI is not, just as we have what the metaverse is and what it was not, right? Its first metaverse, for example, was a real estate grab. But we're going to start to see, the way we shop in 20 years isn't going to be scrolling through a phone like that. We're going to hold shoes in our hands, through a digital projection and figure out if it fits. It's great for me because I can't find anything anywhere. If you were my life, you would have laughed. It's very true. I'm very painful.
6'10".
Yeah. We'll do photos later. But no, so in fact, there was a great example this morning that was cloud computing, going back to it. We thought, well, how good it would be if we could put games on that. And we realized, it doesn't work. Google Stadia did not last very long as a result of that. What we are going to see is, well, what if the generative AI could be live in the cloud while the game itself does not? For the person you're talking to on the other end of the screen, to stop and take a second and think about an answer actually plays to the realism of the immersion that you're going to be in, much more than having that spontaneous, billion line of code answer. That is where I think, if I can bring this full circle, is where the generative is really going to play out. Learning what it does, learning what it does not do. And one last statement on this, we don't know what it does. So that's, again, where this convergence is. You're seeing where it applies to the medical industry. You're seeing where it applies to the construction industry. What about in between? What about the people that build hospitals? One of the ones we were working on a few weeks ago was nurse training. The VR guys are taking care of that. What is it going to be like to do an endoscopy? Something that you really won't get to do very often. Now that's where these opportunities lie.
Yeah, I think that's good. Jake, one of the things that we're also looking at is, as part of the VR ARA is business adoption. So I think VR is often looked at as a consumer play, but it does have a lot of application within healthcare, within semiconductor, within aerospace and defense. So business adoption is another area we're looking at. We've got about 20 minutes left, and I'm going to ask a question of the panel, but I'd also like to ask who's here as well. Could be more Q&A, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to pose it as if you were CEO of Phoenix Startup Inc., what does the ecosystem need? What's it missing? How could it compete with the Miamis, the Austins, the San Franciscos, the Seattles? What make those places attractive for startups? What would you put in your tool belt? What would be some of your action items to have Phoenix more recognized as an entrepreneurial or as a tech center?
I think for me, I'm a little young and new to Arizona, but for me, the biggest thing that I see is I don't necessarily think we're missing too many of the pieces. I think it's what we kind of talked about at the Venture Cafe last time, which is really just the collaboration piece. And I think we have the want from all different groups in Arizona to work together and create some of the products that we're talking about, the experiences that we're talking about. But I don't necessarily think we're missing anything. I think we're just kind of missing the things that fill the gap in the middle. I think we're missing the collaboration between all the different groups, and obviously that's why we have systems like this and events like this. But I don't necessarily think we're missing any of the pieces. I think we've got all the pieces that we need from my lens, from the gaming and esports lens, to kind of take it to the next level of California or Texas or something of the sort. Again, I just think we're missing something in the middle between the people that can make it happen.
I would agree that we have all of the necessary ingredients and they are gaining momentum. I think where Arizona can really differentiate itself is in actually the advanced technology area. We have unprecedented foreign direct investment in semiconductors, in battery, and in other industries that are being promoted from an economic development perspective, and have been for some time in our state. And I think that we can differentiate ourselves in advanced manufacturing and other areas where we're not just trying to be a software, another Silicon Valley that focuses on software or blockchain like Miami. I think I was having a conversation yesterday about the tiering of VC communities, and one of the points that was made is we do need some more unicorns, and that sort of generates the momentum for a particular place. There have been some of them, like GoDaddy's a well-known one, and there are going to be more. And now that we have more private investment that's going to be dedicated to the state, the goal of that is to prevent startups from leaving. So once they're formed here, we want them to stay here and become the next Fortune 500s of tomorrow.
There's kind of two things that are coming to mind. 10 years ago, I would have said the money. And I think Diana kind of mentioned that earlier too, is maybe that was true one time. It's really not the case anymore. Like Jay said, everything's finally here. So the first, I would say, is we need to stop trying to be like California. I had no offense to them either, but have you ever gone on and had a copycat recipe of something that you wanted to make? It never turns out the way you want it to. It never is good as the original. So stop trying to be someone else. Find your flavor. Find your flavor and be the best at it in the world. The second one is, to continue the cooking metaphor, is the oven. I think we have all the pieces in the bowl. We really just need to apply some heat.
So in Arizona, Joe?
Maybe.
If
Go ahead, Kirk.
I can, what I'm seeing in the industry, and I agree with everything that all you guys said, especially what Diana said about next unicorn. I'm hoping to listen up to that. But ultimately, I think the two things that we're missing are funding at the very early stages. There's plenty of growth funding, right? There are lots of options. But for that angel, for that seed or pre-seed, we don't have the options here. Because let's be honest, most of the people in the live here and invest and have means of investing are probably old white men who are used to investing in real estate, because that's how they made their money, right? So we as a community, I think, need to do a better job of conveying some of the ways that Arizona is amazing in giving them the opportunity to invest. What other state gives you 30% of your investment as a tax deduction if you invest in a startup company? How many people you think know that? Hardly even 3 or 4%, right? So we need to do a better job as a community conveying to all the people throughout the state that we need help at the pre-seed and the seed stage. The second thing that I think we are missing, yes, Dan Benson is a champion of gaming in Glendale. Yes, there are people in Mesa who may be champions of something else. But most of the municipalities, I think you mentioned 22 or 24, however many are in GPEC, but the majority of these cities that are distributed are not being pulled into the fold and told, hey, we're trying to do something here, pay attention, we need your help, right? Because at the level of city government and administration, these people are just trying to not lose their jobs and get in trouble. We need to tell them, no, that's not the mindset you need to have. We're in a growth mentality. We have the ecosystem here where we can revolutionize hospitality. This is a hotbed for hospitality. This is a hotbed for real estate because half of California moved here during the pandemic. We're not doing a good enough job conveying that on a municipal level.
So, a communications problem.
I would say so.
Okay. I'd almost say culture to what you said of pulling it together. I have found that collaboration is relatively strong here compared to the Bay Area. At least people will take your calls and your meetings. But I think that the challenge of geography and not having kind of a central place as well in the city.
If I can really too, just to feed on that, because Igor is absolutely correct. Not every player here. Now, one thing that we didn't get to mention more of that I wish we had is that something that both stands out for Arizona, or the greater Phoenix region especially, but also kind of hinders it, is this willingness to collaborate with cities, right? So Glendale being one example, but what we've noticed is that when you pick a technology, there's someone here that wants to be the champion of that. And obviously we have semiconductors. Chandler has their big play with automatic vehicles or driverless vehicles. But not everyone is at that point. And that's where we go way back to what Jay said earlier about education. This risk aversion or we had one, I talk with a lot of city leaders and whatnot. We had one person that was like, man, we could be the best combustion engine manufacturer. You want to be the best in a product that should be dead in 5 years. That's fascinating. But no, we really do need to help everyone get on the same table, remove the risk aversion, and I actually do agree with the funding too.
Was there any yeah?
One of the potential synergistic driver, since you're into VR and AR, another potential synergistic driver for that industry would be the film industry. And at the state level, there has not been tax credits for filmmakers coming to Arizona, and so that's why California is still king in the film industry. But if we could get tax credits for filmmakers, I have a whole list of people who would move here. There was supposed to be a proposed film studio out by Vistancia, out of the northwest corner of the 303. That fell through because of the fact that there was no policy support for making that happen.
I can feel Jake looking at me. We agree. ACA has put together actually a tax incentive program. They brought it back. But it only applies to film, and the way that it was lobbied for by two groups, they set it at a standard of 10,000 square feet sound system or studio. So that takes away, as Jake's talking to the technology, all the virtual production that is taking over the industry and can be applied to all these other industries, right? So nothing against film, but film is moving more digital and gaming engines for its development as well. And having that size real estate development, because that's why it was done, why it was lobbied for, and set up that way. I think it needs some tweaking, and they're still, I think, taking public comment. They haven't figured out the allocations on that yet, but there is something in play again for the film industry.
I used to be a black and white film because I'm a radiologist, but now we're filmless. So I can no longer say that I'm a film critic as a radiologist.
Sir.
So I have one comment. I was on the Austin Chamber of Commerce about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And ran economic development for our traffic in town. And we focused a lot on startups back then. And I don't really see this region focusing on startups like Austin. And what I mean by that is we had a concerted effort around branding the city and the surrounding areas as being friendly to startups, targeting startups that technologies we wanted in town, and then going after it. And we specifically targeted California to bring those folks into town. And I think we have an opportunity here to do that. Because right now, I don't think we have a clear brand around what really is a good fit for startups in this town and what we are. I think if you ask people what our brand is right now, they would tell you hospitality and hospital and benefit. You don't ever understand, and probably, you don't think of Phoenix as a place to come and start a business today. And you don't even know, we don't really have a reputation for what startups are doing. Good categories for us to play in. It's kind of a collection of things that pretty much under the radar. And I think, so you do have a communications problem. And I do think we can leverage some organizations that are in place, like Arizona Commons Authority, for instance, but maybe the Tech Council. But right now, I don't think we have a coherent strategy around how to make what we want to be and what we want to be as a community as far as our reputation goes. And we don't really have a plan for that.
Yeah, I agree. And I went through this exercise myself when I was putting the question together about the CEO of Phoenix Startup Inc. And you mentioned many things, right? I remember talking to Reno ECDev and them saying, we're going on road shows to San Francisco and Seattle, and they're going after it, right? I think one of the benefits that I've seen, again, I just moved here from the Bay Area during COVID, is the alignment of ACA, GPEC, down to the city level on a lot of what they're looking to attract.
Yeah, you got to figure out the strategy among the organizations that we got today. Maybe we need another one, I don't know. But we need to coordinate correctly with the road. We won't have a plan. We have a lot of good ideas to run around and do stuff.
Yeah. We have a lot of resources as well from the education community. Well, maybe we will have that conversation and pull together a small workshop or a call or something. And, I don't know if it's our place, but I guess if nobody else is doing it, then see where it goes. Yes.
I also moved here from the Bay, but 9 years ago, at Phoenix Startup Week's origin. So I get your comments, and if you would have been here 9 years ago, you would have been so proud of us right now. So if you noticed, Phoenix Startup Week has track days. This is exactly what we're doing. We're saying on Monday, sustainability. Look at all the businesses and sustainability that's happening. Wednesday, advanced tech. Tomorrow, MedTech Bio. Friday, SaaS. How does this feel to everybody? Look at all these successful companies. We get these new voices grouped into the conversation. So this is exactly what you're saying happening. It may not be in the tempo or the mode that you're hoping for, but this is a long time coming to get to this place to have a conversation. And we would welcome the PHX community, the YESAZ, Phoenix Startup Week would be welcome to bring everybody to the table to further those conversations as we grow our community. And lastly, I would say it's an iterative process, right? So it isn't, we're going to stand for this, we're going to put our stake in the ground. Economic development is, I've never lived in a place, I came here from Silicon Valley versus through Boston, never come to a place where there's so many gems in economic development that really are the 10 posts of the community here, and I think if you're not used to that, you have to learn how to work around it and incorporate them into the success story.
I'm not saying we don't have a good story to tell, I'm just saying we don't have a real strategy and plan.
And if I can follow up too in just 2 seconds, I'm the native here, I've been here a long time. I think that we do have a lot more pieces, especially from 9 years ago, but where I will pinpoint something I think we're lacking is the follow-up. I think that we've done a great job, laying out the bed and making this and saying, hey, look, Arizona's a great place to start up. Everyone comes over, they put their stake in the ground, we're nowhere to be found. Name a single business that succeeds without customer service. And I think that's really where we're at. I think we need to have the follow-up. We need to have the support resources to continue that journey.
Well, maybe there's something that a follow-on that can, be planned, and, many voices communicating that and bringing a community together.
Cool. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Okay, let's give it up